He thought he was saving an alien stranger, but she turned out to be his destiny, the Guardian's promise. Commander Lyra Jensen fidgeted with the collar of her formal Terra Defense Force uniform as she surveyed the gleaming reception hall. The orbital peace station Helios hung in space between Earth and the Lumidian homeworld, a neutral ground where centuries of hostility might finally end. As head of security for the human delegation, Lyra's job was simple on paper: protect the diplomats, maintain order, prevent catastrophe. She ran a hand through her short auburn hair, tugging at the ends nervously. Simple, except for the fact that humans and Lumidians have been locked in a cold war for nearly a century. "Commander Jensen," a voice called from behind her. "The Lumidian delegation has arrived." Lyra turned to Lieutenant Dominic Reed, her second in command. "Security perimeter triple checked. Every entrance, exit, and ventilation shaft is monitored," Dominic confirmed. "Though I still don't trust these glowing visitors to play fair." Lyra frowned. "Keep those opinions to yourself, Lieutenant. Peace doesn't begin with suspicion." As the massive doors at the far end of the reception hall slid open, Lyra straightened her posture. The Lumidian delegation entered, their tall, slender forms gliding rather than walking. Their skin shimmered with a soft violet luminescence, giving them an ethereal quality that had earned them their nickname among humans, the Celestials. At the center walked one Lumidian who immediately caught Lyra's attention. Unlike the others whose luminescence was a soft violet, this one's skin glowed with a deeper indigo hue. Long silver hair cascaded down their back, and eyes the color of amber surveyed the room with a piercing intelligence. Ambassador Thorne, a stern-faced veteran diplomat, approached the Lumidian delegation. "Welcome to Orbital Station Helios. I am Ambassador Thorne, Earth's chief representative." The indigo-hued Lumidian stepped forward. "I am Zarian, voice of the Lumidian High Council. We come seeking harmony between our worlds." Their voice carried a musical quality, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Lyra found herself momentarily transfixed before mentally shaking herself back to attention. She was here to work, not admire alien diplomats, no matter how fascinating. The formalities proceeded smoothly, but Lyra couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Something in the station's atmosphere felt charged, and not just with the usual tension of high-stakes diplomacy. Her instincts, honed through years of combat and security operations, were humming with warning. Later that evening, as delegates mingled during the reception dinner, Lyra circled the perimeter of the room, eyes constantly scanning for threats. She noticed Zarian standing alone, near one of the observation windows, gazing out at the stars. Duty-bound to ensure the safety of all diplomats, Lyra approached. "Is everything satisfactory, Delegate Zarian?" The Lumidian turned, amber eyes meeting hers. "Commander Jensen, your reputation precedes you." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "You know who I am. The Terra Defense Force officer who negotiated peace with the Martian separatists, who prevented assassination attempts on 3 planetary governors, who survived the Battle of Europa when most of her squad did not." Zarian tilted their head slightly. "Yes, I make it my business to know those responsible for my safety." "Then you know I take that responsibility seriously," Lyra replied, unsettled by how much the Lumidian knew about her service record. "Indeed." Zarian's gaze returned to the stars. "Your kind values self-preservation above most things, yet your records show numerous instances where you risked yourself for others. A fascinating contradiction." Lyra followed Zarian's gaze to the star field. "Not a contradiction, just part of being human. The Lumidian way teaches that self-sacrifice is illogical. The collective is strengthened by each individual maintaining optimal function." Zarian's voice carried no judgment, merely stated fact. "Then why seek peace with us at all?" Lyra asked. A smile played at the corners of Zarian's mouth. "Perhaps some contradictions are worth exploring." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden flicker of the station's lights. Lyra's hand instinctively moved to her sidearm. "Just a power fluctuation," one of the technicians called out. Backup systems engage. But Lyra's instincts screamed danger. Zarian, I think you should. The explosion ripped through the far wall of the reception hall before she could finish her sentence. Chaos erupted as delegates scattered in panic. Through the smoke, Lyra spotted 3 armored figures entering through the breach, weapons raised. Protect the delegates. She shouted into her comm unit, already moving toward Zarian. Time seemed to slow as one of the attackers locked onto the Lumidian diplomat. Lyra saw the weapon's targeting beam find Zarian's chest. Without hesitation, she launched herself forward, colliding with the Lumidian just as energy fire scorched the air where they had been standing. The momentum carried them both behind a fallen table. Pain bloomed across Lyra's shoulder where the energy blast had grazed her. Stay down, she ordered, drawing her weapon and returning fire. You're injured, Zarian observed, their voice impossibly calm. Part of the job, Lyra grunted, wincing as she shifted position to get a better angle on the attackers. The firefight was brief but intense. Lyra's security team responded with practiced efficiency, neutralizing 2 attackers while the third retreated back through the breach. But the damage was done. The peace talks had been violated. Trust shattered before it could even form. As medical teams rushed to treat the injured, Lyra struggled to stand, the adrenaline fading and pain taking its place. Zarian caught her arm, supporting her weight with surprising strength. You require medical attention, the Lumidian stated. Lyra tried to pull away. I need to secure the area. Check for other threats. Your second-in-command is handling that quite effectively, Zarian countered, nodding toward Dominic, who was indeed coordinating the security response. You, however, took energy fire meant for me. Just doing my job, Lyra muttered, though the room had begun to spin alarmingly. A job that apparently includes intercepting plasma bolts with your body. Fascinating. Was that humor in the Lumidian's voice? Before Lyra could decide, darkness claimed her. She awoke in the station's medical bay, the sterile white ceiling swimming into focus above her. Trying to sit up sent fresh waves of pain through her shoulder and chest. The doctor recommends against movement for another 6 hours, came Zarian's voice from beside the bed. Lyra turned her head, surprised to find the Lumidian diplomat seated there. You're still here. How long was I out? 4 hours and 17 minutes. Zarian leaned forward slightly. Time I have spent attempting to understand. Understand what? Lyra asked, her mouth dry. Why you did it. The logic escapes me. There was genuine curiosity in those amber eyes. Your protective duty could have been fulfilled by returning fire from cover. Instead, you intercepted the shot with your physical form. Inefficient, dangerous, yet admirable. Lyra let out a weak laugh that made her wince. Sometimes there isn't time for logical calculations. You see danger, you act. Your people would do this for any life, or because I am diplomatically significant. Any life, Lyra confirmed, human or otherwise. Zarian was silent for a long moment. Our beliefs teach that emotional responses lead to chaos. That logic must prevail for civilization to function. Yet I find myself grateful, in a way that transcends logical appreciation for diplomatic preservation. Before Lyra could respond, Ambassador Thorne burst into the medical bay, his face flushed with anger. Commander Jensen, what the hell happened out there? Sir, we had a security breach. 3 attackers. I know what happened, Thorne snapped. What I want to know is how it happened. This station was supposed to be impenetrable. Zarian rose to their full height, towering over the ambassador. Your security chief prevented an interstellar incident by saving my life. Perhaps gratitude would be more appropriate than accusations. Thorne's expression soared further. With all due respect, Delegate Zarian, this is an internal matter. An attack on peace talks is hardly internal, Zarian countered. Especially when my investigation suggests the attackers had access to station security protocols. Lyra's attention sharpened despite her pain. What investigation? While you were unconscious, I took the liberty of examining the attacker's equipment with my own security team. The breach was too precise, too well-timed. Zarian's eyes narrowed. Someone wanted these talks to fail. That's a serious accusation, Thorne said, his voice dropping dangerously. One I suggest you keep to yourself until we've conducted a proper investigation. After Thorne departed, Lyra struggled to sit up despite the pain. You really think this was an inside job? I think, Zarian said carefully, that there are forces on both sides who prefer conflict to cooperation, who find the status quo profitable. They met Lyra's gaze directly. And I think you and I may be the only ones positioned to discover the truth. Lyra should have reported this conversation immediately to her superiors, should have maintained professional distance. Instead, she found herself nodding. Where do we start? As Zarian outlined what they'd discovered so far, Lyra realized they had crossed an invisible boundary. No longer just protector and protected, they were now conspirators, united against unknown enemies, and by something more profound than duty. This partnership may prove dangerous, Zarian warned, seeming to read her thoughts. Lyra smiled despite her pain. Some risks are worth taking. In the sterile light of the medical bay, human and Lumidian regarded each other with newfound respect and the first tendrils of something neither species had words to properly define. The peace talks had been compromised, but perhaps a different kind of understanding was beginning to take root. Celestial hearts. 2 days after the attack, Lyra stood in her quarters reviewing security footage for the 100th time. Her shoulders still ached beneath the advanced healing patch, a constant reminder of how close disaster had come. Computer, replay section 47B, she commanded. The holographic display flickered, showing the reception hall moments before the explosion. Something wasn't adding up, but she couldn't pinpoint what. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Zarian, the Lumidian's indigo glow seeming more subdued than usual. Commander Jensen, Zarian greeted formally, aware of potential monitoring. I hoped we might continue our cultural exchange discussion. Lyra nodded, understanding the pretense. Once the door closed, she activated the privacy shield, a small device that would scramble any listening equipment. Did you find anything? She asked, her voice low despite the precaution. Zarian produced a small data crystal. Access logs from our end. 3 Lumidian council members contacted the station's engineering section just hours before the attack. Lyra took the crystal, her fingers briefly brushing against Zarian's. The Lumidian's skin was surprisingly warm, almost vibrating with energy. She ignored the unexpected tingle the contact sent through her. That matches what I found in our protocols, she said, turning to her terminal. Someone entered the security grid using Ambassador Thorne's credentials during his diplomatic dinner. But Thorne was at the dinner, Zarian observed. Exactly. Someone else used his access. Lyra pulled up a schematic of the station. The problem is, I don't know who to trust anymore. If I report this to my superiors, it could alert whoever is behind this. Zarian finished. The same dilemma exists on my side. They stood in silence, the gravity of their situation settling between them. 2 individuals from historically hostile species, working together against unknown forces within their own governments. Why are you doing this? Lyra finally asked. Breaking protocol, investigating your own people. You're risking everything. Zarian's amber eyes studied her with that unnervingly direct gaze. I could ask you the same question. I believe in peace, Lyra answered simply. As do I. But, Zarian hesitated, an unusual display of uncertainty. There is something else. When you intercepted that energy blast, you violated everything I understand about logical behavior. It intrigues me. Lyra felt heat rise to her cheeks. We should focus on the investigation. Indeed. Zarian seemed almost amused by her discomfort. I suggest we begin by examining the maintenance tunnels near the breach point. If the attackers had inside help, there would be evidence. Navigating the station's maintenance corridors required both Lyra's security clearance and careful timing to avoid regular patrol routes. They moved silently, Zarian's natural luminescence dimmed to a faint glow. These tunnels connect to both the Lumidian and human quarters, Lyra observed as they reached a junction. An ideal route for conspirators from both sides to meet unobserved, Zarian agreed. As they rounded a corner, voices echoed from ahead. Lyra pulled Zarian into a narrow service alcove, their bodies pressed close in the confined space. She could feel the gentle hum of energy that seemed to emanate from the Lumidian skin, like standing near a powerful electrical field. Lieutenant Dominic Reed's voice became recognizable as the speakers approached. The next demonstration needs to be more effective. We barely disrupted the talks. The Lumidian Council is growing impatient, replied an unfamiliar voice with the musical cadence of a Lumidian. They expected the humans to withdraw after the first attack. Ambassador Thorne won't withdraw unless things escalate. He's stubborn, Dominic replied. And that commander of his is becoming a problem. She's asking too many questions. Lyra felt Zarian tense against her. Their eyes met in the dim light, confirmation passing between them without words. After the conspirators passed, they extracted themselves from the alcove. "My own lieutenant," Lyra whispered, the betrayal stinging sharper than her wound. "And members of my delegation working with him," Zarian added grimly. "We need evidence to present to both our leaders simultaneously, or they'll simply be replaced by other conspirators." They made their way to a maintenance hub where station data was processed. Using Lyra's emergency override codes, they accessed communication logs that revealed the extent of the conspiracy. Powerful mining consortiums from both worlds had bribed officials to maintain the conflict. Peace would mean shared resources rather than the exclusive exploitation they currently enjoyed. "We have enough to expose them," Lyra said, downloading the evidence to secure devices. "But getting it to the right people will be." An alarm blared throughout the station. "Security alert. Unauthorized access in Maintenance Section 12. "They've discovered us," Zarian said. Lyra checked her weapon. "We need to separate. Take your copy of the evidence to your High Counselor Vex. I'll get mine to Admiral Harper. They're the only leaders I'm certain aren't involved." "It's too dangerous," Zarian protested. "The conspirators will be watching all transmission channels and transit routes, which is why we need to create a diversion." Lyra's mind raced through possibilities. "The shuttle bay. I can trigger an emergency protocol that will draw security there." As they formulated their plan, Lyra couldn't help noticing how seamlessly they worked together, despite their different approaches. Where she relied on intuition and quick decisions, Zarian contributed careful analysis and foresight. Together, they created something stronger than either could alone. "This plan carries significant risk," Zarian noted as they prepared to separate. "Best ones usually do," Lyra replied with a half-smile. Zarian caught her arm before she could leave. "If we succeed, what happens afterward? Our people will be forced to cooperate, but..." The unspoken question hung between them. "What about us?" "One crisis at a time," Lyra said, though the same thoughts had been troubling her. Whatever was growing between them had no precedent, no protocol to follow. Their diversion worked initially. Lyra triggered the security alert in the shuttle bay while Zarian made for the Lumidian Communication Center. But halfway to her destination, Lyra found herself cornered by Dominic and two security officers whose loyalty he had purchased. "Commander Jensen," Dominic said, weapon trained on her chest. "I always respected your combat skills, but your politics are disappointingly naive. Selling out humanity for mining rights seems pretty naive to me." Lyra countered, calculating her odds. 3 armed opponents. Narrow corridor. Wounded shoulder. Not good. "The Lumidians would strip our colonies bare if they could," Dominic spat. "We're just making sure they don't get the chance. By keeping a pointless conflict going. How many more soldiers have to die?" Lyra edged backward slowly. "Necessary sacrifices for humanity's future." "I don't think so." Lyra activated her comm unit. Now, nothing happened. Dominic laughed. Your Lumidian friend has already been captured. Your little scheme failed before it began. Despair threatened to overwhelm her, but years of combat training took over. In one fluid motion, Lyra dropped and rolled, firing her weapon at the overhead conduits. Steam burst from the ruptured pipes, filling the corridor with blinding fog. She used the confusion to disable one guard, but Dominic's shot caught her in the leg as she tried to escape. Lyra dragged herself into an access tunnel, applying a quick seal to the wound. She had to reach Admiral Harper, had to believe Zarian had somehow escaped capture too. With her leg injured, the journey through the station's maintenance areas became a grueling test of endurance. Each movement sent fresh pain shooting through her body, but she pushed forward, the evidence clutched in her hand like a lifeline. She was nearing the command deck when the station rocked with an explosion. Emergency alarms blared as the artificial gravity fluctuated. Using the walls for support, Lyra continued her painful progress toward the Admiral's office. When she finally reached it, she found not only Admiral Harper, but also High Counselor Vex of the Lumidians, and between them, looking battered but very much alive, stood Zarian. Commander Jensen, Admiral Harper said, rising from his desk, your friend here has been telling us a remarkable story. Lyra collapsed into a chair, relief washing over her. You have the evidence. Zarian nodded, though delivering it proved more challenging than anticipated. The explosion? A regrettable necessity, Zarian replied. The conspirators had blocked all communication channels. I needed to access the emergency broadcast system. High Counselor Vex, a Lumidian with pale blue luminescence, stepped forward. Both our governments owe you a debt of gratitude. The conspiracy has been exposed, and the true peace process can begin. As medical staff treated her wounds, Lyra learned that Dominic and his co-conspirators had been apprehended. The peace talks would resume with new protocols and greater transparency. Later, as she rested in the medical bay once again, Zarian entered with uncharacteristic hesitation. The doctors say you will recover fully, they said. Takes more than a few energy blasts to keep me down. Lyra replied with a tired smile. Zarian moved closer, their luminescence brightening slightly. I've been assigned as the permanent Lumidian liaison to Earth, to help build understanding between our peoples. Lyra felt an unexpected lightness in her chest. Good, we could use more understanding. My research suggests that humans sometimes form attachments across significant differences. Zarian continued, their formal tone belied by an intensity in those amber eyes. Very thorough research, Lyra teased gently. Though there is no precedent for human-Lumidian relationships, I find myself unable to apply logical constraints to what has developed between us. Lyra reached out, taking Zarian's hand. The energy that hummed beneath their skin seemed to resonate with something inside her. Some things transcend logic. Indeed, Zarian's fingers interlaced with hers. I believe humans have a saying. Some risks are worth taking. As the station continued its orbit between two worlds once divided by fear and misunderstanding, Lyra and Zarian began charting a course through unexplored territory, not just between planets, but between hearts. Their journey would face challenges from both societies, but they had already proven that the most powerful bonds form when differences become strengths rather than barriers. So, Lyra said with a smile that held both challenge and promise, what's our next mission? Zarian's luminescence brightened in response. I believe humans call it making history. And in that moment, surrounded by the vastness of space that had once seemed to separate their worlds, they found themselves at the beginning of something unprecedented, a future where differences did not divide, but rather created something greater than either could imagine alone.